was a dime in your prime. Then you got sunshine on a cloud.
My newsman's brain says, you can't operate in a bubble. You got to have some context. "1965. We're building a building. What else is going on?
0, ignition, 3, liftoff, and we have a liftoff. The winner is Julie Andrews.
Well, the first American soldiers are arriving in Vietnam. In Canada, two big things are happening. First of all, postal workers are on a nationwide illegal wildcat strike for the right to strike. And I know that because I was one of them. The other thing that happened in Canada in 1965, we got a new flag. You may have noticed it. It's got a maple leaf on it. What was happening in Edmonton in 1965? Well, Mayor Bill Horlock, the longest-serving mayor in Edmonton, had an idea for the future. He thought it'd be a little easier driving around Edmonton if we had maybe a ring road or a freeway system or something. And he hoped a future council would do something about that. And Beatlemania. 1965, people were lined up around the block to see the movie Help. Move you up real fast to 1979. Marg and I and her family were members of this ward. Marg was in the hospital, awaiting the arrival of our son Jonathan. And in the hospital, there was a big window, and as she was in labor, we would see the storm clouds that were rolling around outside, black clouds rolling around, and all of a sudden, the clouds parted for a second, and a ray of light came through, and then they closed up again, and our son Jonathan was born. I thought, wow, we hadn't decided on a middle name. We wanted a name that would reflect this ray of sunshine. But we looked through everything. We talked to church members. Nobody had an idea. We couldn't find it in a book anywhere. The next day, I was downtown at a synagogue interviewing a rabbi about what was taking place there. When I was done, he said, "So Bob, what's new with you?" And I thought I should tell him the story. So I did, and he said, "Oh, Bob, that's so easy. His name would be Shemesh. It means sunshine." And I said, "That's nice, but Shemesh." And he said, "Oh, if that's too much, everybody would call him Shem." And so right over here, he was blessed as Jonathan Shem Layton. And that little ray of sunshine brightened up our life for 3 months. And then the angels came. They called it crib death, sudden infant death syndrome. And that was where we really became close to the members of this ward who did so much for us as we went through this time. The bishop was Morgan Woolsey. When the word went out that our son had died, the first person who came through the door was Ray Lonsdale. That name may bring back some memories. And he came through the door and he said, "Bob, some babies are too pure to be on this earth." And of course, Gwen and Bud Wilson were there to be with us. When Bishop Woolsey came over, And we told him how much our hearts were broken, and he gave us some comfort. And I said, you know, our hearts aren't the only thing that are broken, Bishop. Our budget is broken. Do you know how much a funeral costs? I had no idea. A couple of $1,000s? Where are we going to get that? Bishop Woolsey covered the whole cost of the funeral. Not the way you're thinking. He said, let me go with you to the funeral home. And so we went there, and he looked at everything, and he said to the fellow, first part of the bill is for flowers. You know, a lot of people have sent flowers to the Layton's house. We have people who will move those flowers to the church. So take that off. He says, okay, next thing, a family car and a driver. And of course, I knew I shouldn't be driving and should have someone else driving or something. And the bishop said, that's an expensive price. It must be a nice car. And the fellow said, well, yes, it's a Lincoln Continental. And Bishop Woolsey said, well, just so happens I drive a Lincoln Continental, so I'll let them use that. And they said, but you should have a professional driver. You're going to be in a funeral procession. He said, yeah, we have a professional driver. He's a police officer. His name is Skip Willis. And he drove it. The next item on the list was the most expensive, the hearse and a driver. And Bishop Woolsey thought about that, and he turned around and he looked at Marg and me and he said, I know this is important. I want to say this the right way. He said, you know, the casket is only this big. And my car has a really big trunk. What would you think? Would it be okay if we just carried him to his burial in the trunk? And so it was that the cost of the funeral disappeared. And we went on to have a beautiful funeral in this building and brought everything very close together. This building is held together by bricks and mortar. From my perspective, the people, the family, the wards are held together by memories. Memories are important because they bring a sense of continuity. They strengthen your relations. They preserve cultural and spiritual heritage. When you share memories, you help others to recall their memories. And a shared identity comes out. There's a sense of belonging, a sense of comfort. The next generation has a better understanding of their roots and where they came from and the connection they have with their family and with the ward and with the gospel that keeps them on the right path. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today, and I would like to thank Bishop Cleland for having the inspiration to put this day together. Thank you.